Right, so welcome everyone to our weekly call. Hope you all had a fantastic weekend. And it's Monday again. Don't know how that happened. Right, let me share my screen so you can see what we're going to talk about this week. Right, as I think most of you will hopefully be aware, we're not going to do the proposed panel discussion this week because we couldn't quite get people's diaries to work in terms of the participants. Although Puneet from Google should be joining us anyway, so he'll be on the call. Just listening to the discussion. I'm in the process of just trying to coordinate diaries to sort of reschedule that discussion, which we'll put back on as quickly as that works for diaries. And the plan is, I see Puneet has just joined the call, that we should have at least Puneet Sood and Joe Crow from Google and Comcast respectively, talking about sort of how they've sort of scaled up support from encrypted DNS and any sort of issues that have arisen in that, etc. As well as, again, diaries permitting, we should have representation from both Open Exchange and Infoblocks to give a sort of software vendor perspective on developments. So that should be quite an interesting discussion, and I'll let you all know the new date for that as soon as it's finalised. In the meantime, what we are going to talk about, we'll touch on IETF 114 in a moment, then pick up on a quick update on where some of the ADD drafts are at currently, because there's been quite a few ADD working group emails over the last week or so. We'll pick up the discussion we had a week or so ago on Apple and DNSSEC. And then we may just talk about some of the highlights from Eurodig, which ran last week, mainly Tuesday, Wednesday last week. I say we may talk about that. That's because Vittorio, who might cover that, is currently on a fairly long drive between I can't remember now, he did tell me, but I've forgotten. Anyway, a long drive. So if he gets to his destination in time, he'll join the call and we'll touch on that. If not, we may pick up next week instead. As well as a couple of other topics that we've got stored up for next week. Once we've done that, there's a few recent developments which I think will be of interest, plus some forthcoming events and anything else that anyone wants to bring up. So without further ado, let's firstly talk about IETF 114. When I looked on sort of the sort of details of who's registered a short time ago before this call, at the time there were just over 770 people registered to attend, of which about 2/3, so just over 480 were due to attend on site, with the balance attending remotely using MeetEcho. So a reminder on dates, otherwise I'll forget, is that the sort of standard rate ends in 2 weeks today at 23:59 UTC to be precise. So if you haven't registered and are planning to, I think it bumps up another $150 to $1,000 on the 12th. So do bear that in mind, that I think it's currently, I think, $850 for in-person. I can't remember the rates for remote, but there will be also a commensurate increase in remote registration rates as well. But numbers-wise, from memory, I think in Vienna, the last meeting, we had 350 on site in total, so we're already well past that in terms of the number of on-site attendees. So that's quite encouraging. Looking at the draft agenda, which I emphasize is draft, and as many of you will know, it changes quite significantly, or can do, between the draft agenda and the final agenda. But currently there are 7 BOFs included on the schedule, which if that's sort of confirmed with the final agenda, that's a significant increase over the number of BOFs at the last few meetings. So I think that's very welcome, just in terms of new topics being picked up by the IETF community. Those of you looking at the screen will see the titles of them, which are just included on the slide. I couldn't see any other details available yet. No doubt, as the agenda's finalised, there'll be links to the relevant papers such that they exist for each of those. So quite a broad range of topics, as you can see from the titles at least. The other thing I just wanted to highlight again from the draft agenda, from the various topics, ones I thought worth highlighting that will be of interest to a greater or lesser extent to people on this call. You've got the PEARG session is currently on the schedule. As you would expect, there's a TLS working group session, an OHI session, obviously an ADD session, plus Deprive, Mask, HRPC, DNS Ops, and MADNS, amongst very many others. So again, quite a rich selection of topics running. As those of you that follow IETF events closely will be aware that none of the agendas for any of those are available yet, and I don't expect they will be for the next couple of weeks until the agenda firms up. And even then, well, in some cases, I think at the last meeting, some of the agendas weren't published until pretty much the week before the meeting itself, so it might not be till the latter part of July, or so mid-July rather, before we get the agendas for all of the working groups. But based on the combination of the sort of number of working group sessions and BOFs, it looks like it's going to be a pretty sort of rich and varied selection of topics that will be on the schedule for this meeting. And I thought it was also worth highlighting that there is a social this time around, which there wasn't in Vienna. So our location hosts, Comcast, NBC Universal, apparently have arranged a session event at the Barnes Foundation. So we have that to look forward to as well. At least anyone will that's there in person. So thus far, full steam ahead. So touch wood, but all looking very promising at the moment. But do remember the standard rate ends 2 weeks today. So if you're planning to register, haven't got round to it yet, it'd be good to do so sooner rather than later. I should also say, if you haven't booked flights yet, they're a lot more expensive than they used to be. Certainly if you're going transatlantic, they seem to be significantly more expensive at the moment. So again, I wouldn't leave that to the last minute if I were you. Yeah, I will plough on unless anyone has any other observations to make. And if you do, feel free to unmute or raise your virtual hand. Otherwise, I will just continue rolling through stuff. Oh, sorry, Glenn, you have your hand raised. I just noticed. Sorry, do.
I just want to make sure when we talk about IETF 114 that people are aware that we still have social tickets available. So if you're coming, please come and hang out with us on Tuesday night.
Fantastic timing. What is the Barnes Foundation? Because I didn't have time to look it up before the call, Glenn, out of interest. Do you have any knowledge about the social event?
Well, yes, I literally am the organizer of it. So I have deep knowledge. I have like incredible, I can tell you what's on the menu because I picked the menu. And I apologize in advance to some people for some of the beer choices. There are restrictions on what the caterer has access to. And so we had to go with what we could get. But the Barnes Foundation is an art gallery located probably about a 10-minute walk from the venue. And it has a really great collection. of art. And I think people are really going to enjoy it. And the space itself is quite large. So if you're concerned about COVID, as many people are, we have we have access to the whole gallery itself, of course, but the reception area for the food and drink, it's a large area. I mean, this thing could hold probably twice as many people as we're going to have inside. And then outside, it has an equally large outdoor space. So I think that people will find it really easy to both have good conversations, but also food and drink and enjoy themselves, and then see some art.
I see Michael has put in the chat, there's a truly excellent art collection there, apparently. So that's good to know. So that's what fantastic value. I think, if I remember the cost of a social ticket. So good to know that there are some still available if people haven't got around to booking those yet.
Yeah, there's good value, and in particular, I will say that I have looked at the menu, made sure we had a good diverse menu, but also asked the question to the caterer, I don't want anybody to go home hungry. And they assured me nobody will go home hungry. There is a good amount of food, and of course, we will have a wide open wine and bar beer, or wine and beer bar. So come enjoy and do DNS proud.
Fantastic. Well, that's all good to know. And I can see John's put up a reminder that DNSSEC follows immediately after IETF 114 in the same city, same venue, which we'll come back to shortly. But good to plug that. And Peter, you've raised your virtual hand. Did you want to come in?
Sorry, I don't mean to derail things, but I've just been introduced to the concept of a Philly taco, which I'll post a link to a picture of it. Apparently, it's a Philly cheesesteak wrapped in a piece of pizza from a place called Lorenzo's. So just talking about the food reminded me, I think it might be an important note that everybody else should be aware of. So thanks.
Thank you for the warning of something to avoid while visiting Philly. I will warn you, Philly cheesesteaks are delicious.
The whole avoiding, all right? Suddenly I'm very hungry, all right?
Philly cheesesteaks are delicious, but if you like vegetables, you may want to bring your own, because they do not typically include a lot of vegetables.
Well, I hope that you're going to be adjusting the agenda for the caterers, Glenn, based on Peter's insight. You don't look persuaded, but we'll move on. Right, let me share my screen again. Apologies. But yeah, good extra detail on the social event. So take note and book tickets while they're still available, I think is the message there. And that segues neatly into just a quick signposting of some of the sort of recent activity on the various ADD drafts, of which there's been quite a lot over the last week and a half, 2 weeks. So currently, the three of the drafts, DDR, discovery of designated resolvers, DNR, discovery of network designated resolvers, and SVCB DNS, or service binding mapping for DNS servers, have all now been submitted by our AD to the IESG. You'll see on the side I put links to those three drafts plus what the current version is. Although I think they'll probably iterate at least one more version based on comments to the mailing list over the last day or so. I think a few people are coming back to the discussion, having not been looking at them recently, and have submitted some more comments to the authors. So probably another iteration for each of those three to go, but they are all now pretty mature documents. So it's good to see that they're now submitted to the ISG. Without tempting fate, I think Eric's hoping that if possible, we complete that by before IETF 114. So you never know. And also, in case you hadn't seen it, I think in the last day or so, the enterprise split DNS draft, there's been a slight name change from enterprise split DNS to split horizon authority draft. That's so it's gone from version 10 of the split DNS draft to version 0 of the split horizon authority draft, but that effectively it's version 11 in many respects of that document. So again, that's still making progress. That's not submitted to the ISG currently, just for clarity, but that's the other of the current working group documents, all of which have been adopted. So if you've not had a chance to sort of look at any of those in the last few weeks, might be worth just taking a look to see how they've progressed. And Glenn, sorry, I hadn't seen you raise your hand again. So did you want to come back in on that as co-chair of the ADD working group?
Yeah, I wanted to clarify a couple of things. So the name change isn't an attempt to sort of redirect people's attention someplace else. It's a reflection that the draft got adopted by the working group. And so often during those transition moments, when you do an adoption, you do change the name because first drafts sometimes are a little bit skewed from the title from where they end up. And I think this is very much the case here. I do think that we will find that at IETF 114, part of the big discussion for the ADD session will be around both this draft, but also, continue the discussion around the notions that around the split DNS issues. So if people have drafts or if they want agenda time for particular things, please let Tail and myself know so we can, as we're drafting the agenda probably later this week and getting it posted up there, we can include that. But I think that given this is and I realize a lot of people were able to meet in Vienna for 113 in person, but this will be the first North American meeting of ADD, I think, in person. I think we were formed officially just ahead of Vancouver, and then Vancouver never happened. And so I think this may be the first time in person that we're actually meeting to talk about the core issues. So I'm anticipating the conversations to be very active in the room.
Yeah, I think you're right. Now you mentioned it, there was a meeting. Was it at Nanog, possibly West Coast?
I think it was DNS OARC. You're thinking of the DNS. There was a DNS OARC discussion we had way back when around some Eddie stuff, and then we of course had discussions during ITF around the forming of the working group. But by the time we finally get the charter done and then actually created the formal working group, I think that was just ahead of. I have to go back and check my notes for sure, but I think it was just ahead of the Vancouver meeting, which was supposed to be in March of 2020. Right. So this is sort of the first North American meeting of the ADD group.
Yes. Tony in the chat is querying whether it was on the agenda at Montreal for the BOF, perhaps. And I must admit, I can't remember where the BOF was, whether that was there or somewhere else. But
I think we had a number of BOFs. So if I remember right, there was a BOF that was held in, I think, was it Singapore or Bangkok or someplace? I remember it was in Singapore. I remember sitting working on the draft charter in Singapore with a few people. And I think we, of course, had discussions in Montreal around it. But I think they were much more heated about, well, can you do anything? Is there even a standard here that you could possibly do? And I'm very proud of that the group eventually figured out, yeah, there is. And we've got 3 drafts, as you pointed out, that are now in the hands of the ISG. And we've got more drafts in the pipeline. So I think we proved that people said it couldn't be done. We proved them wrong. We did something, and they're good drafts.
Yeah, definite substantive progress, which is always.
And we did it mostly virtually, all through WebEx and stuff like that for the last 2 years. So, well done, people.
So I'm guessing we probably have plenty of content for discussion in the next meeting. Have we got a 2-hour slot? Is that the plan, or have you got an hour? Or
we have requested a 2-hour slot, and we are in discussions right now. We might share, like we did for 113. We might do a sort of shared time slot with Deprive, and so. But stay tuned. I think right now we're slotted in. We're Tuesday afternoon from just before the social.
Oh, okay.
So, So here I'll pitch the social again. You know, come to ADD, get your like really get things going, and then come over and have free beer. Well, not free beer, but you know, unlimited beer once you've paid your entry fee.
Yeah, you should make it conditional. You can't go unless you've been at the ADD working group.
Man muss es halt richtig im Rechner drucken. Also,
Okay, right. Well, there you are. So lots happening in the ADD working group at the moment. So I thought it was worth just highlighting those. Appreciating that with an awful lot going on various of the mailing lists, people may not have had a chance to sort of catch up with those just yet. So worth a read if you have a moment. And then the other topic I wanted to just spend a few minutes on, if we may, which we touched on a couple of weeks ago in the immediate aftermath of WWDC, was the announcement that Apple have put in support for client-side DNSSEC authentication and DDR in iOS 16 and macOS Ventura. I'd sort of had a sort of offline sort of discussion with Tommy Pauly to see whether he wanted to come on to this call at some point to talk about the DNSSEC support, and he's and it's not actually him; it'll be one of his colleagues. But he didn't think that was perhaps something that they'd want to do at the moment. But he did ask whether there were any questions that anyone might want to raise on the sort of DNSSEC support. So I thought I would just take the opportunity to basically ask that here and say, are there any questions that people would find it useful if there was clarification on, or should I just go back to Tommy with my own questions? So just a chance if anyone does, so you can jump in now if there's anything particularly pressing that you think it'd be useful to clarify, or any other thoughts you may have. So I'll stop there for a moment and see if anybody does. If you don't, it's fine. But if you do, now's a good chance to let me know, and I will add them to my list for things to ask via Tommy. Or you can put them in the chat, of course, if you think of anything over the next few minutes. I'm not seeing any hands raised, so if you do think of anything, put them in the chat then, or drop me an email afterwards if that's easier, and I will, in the meantime, press on. So let me just go back again to my screen. Now this was a reminder for me to pause to see if Vittorio has managed to join, which he hasn't. So I'm guessing he is still therefore driving. So we'll pick up on some Eurodig feedback probably at the meeting next Monday. In that case, the reason I was deferring to Vittorio is because he was actually present in person in Trieste, rather than me giving a sort of perspective from accessing it remotely. But the impression I had is it did seem well attended, and there was a rich and very varied set of discussions, but the format was different to the last few meetings. So they tried to have a sort of a theme running through, or two main themes running through the event. But I'll see if Vittorio can join us next week and just take us through that and say what it was like to be present there in person. Right, so moving on then, a few recent developments to highlight. One sort of first one, I understand from John that the some of the court process is due to restart in Germany. Or this is the case between Quad 9 and Sony Music. So the sort of first link, there was an article in Republic, which had quite a useful sort of reasonably detailed article, just giving the context to the case, setting out some of the issues. if you clicked on it first, you would have realised it's not in English. But for those of you that are not fluent in, I think it was in German, your browser, I hope, will have obliged very rapidly with an extremely helpful translation. That was certainly the case with Edge, which delivered a very, very readable version remarkably quickly. And John will interrupt me if he feels there's anything useful.
I was just going to say that it's actually a really well done article and quite thorough. If anybody has just heard about the case or is trying to get a kind of a reference point, forgets what it's about, it addresses some of the core issues of the case, but also talks about why this is important for DNS resolvers, or at least hints as to why this is important for anybody running a recursive resolver, especially in Europe.
And since I hadn't thought of it until literally as you were speaking, John, if you happen to have the link to the location on the Quad 9 website where people can express their support for Quad 9, feel free to post that in the chat if that will be useful. Okay, moving on. AdGuard, just following on from the extremely useful session that we had with Andrei Meshkov 2-3 weeks ago. AdGuard posted an article in the last few days, just on the back of the DOQ standard being finalised, just with some context on DOQ, as well as AdGuard's support for it. So anyone that wants that, there's some useful detail there. Also, just picking up on something we discussed a few weeks back, when the news came out that the Alexa domain ranking list was being discontinued. I know DNS Filter and Cisco, I think, have both sort of put out alternative options that can be used. And then most recently, Infoblox have put out something called InfoRanks, and you can read more about that using the link there. You also see that CIRA, the organisation behind Canadian Shield, put in some browser extensions that support Canadian Shield, which are available for both Firefox and Chrome currently, which I think came out in the last week or so. And then finally, the other thing I sort of just noted in the news this week, since centralization comes up on and off in various discussions amongst many of us, Mark Nottingham has just published an update to his IETF centralization draft. I also saw coincidentally that I think today he's just started working for Cloudflare, so it'd be interesting to see if he continues working on the sort of on the centralization draft, whether it takes a different direction, but we'll see. But certainly worth a read, as that's an important issue more seriously. And thank you, John. I see you've posted a link to the Quad 9 site for the letter of support that anyone wants to express their support for Quad 9's position, going back to the Quad 9 versus Sony Music case. So thank you for that. Few events that are coming up. So I'll give you a bit more detail on what's on the agenda for the European Commission's high-level group for internet governance, which is taking place this Wednesday. I think that takes place about 3 times a year. So that's coming up later this week. We've also talked about IETF 114, DNSOARC, as was mentioned earlier, takes place in the same hotel the 2 days immediately after IETF 114. So it's the Saturday and Sunday, following directly on from the end of IETF 114. And registration has just opened for DNS OARC. If you go to the site, you'll see, I think at least some of the speakers are now confirmed, and registration is now open, and runs through for the next, I think, was it 3 weeks or so, at the sort of standard rate, and then there's a sort of late registration rate which bumps up the registration cost slightly. And then after that we have a gap, of course, and no obvious events I could see that with a link to sort of this sort of stuff in August, but ICANN 75 then kicks off in mid-September, and then UK NOF following on in London immediately after that. So a couple of things in September, nothing much in August, at least nothing I'm aware of. So if anyone knows of anything, feel free to let me know. Oh, and I should have deleted it. I think the call for presentations for DNS OARC is now closed. So unless any of the people involved in the organisation know differently, I believe they now have their complement of papers. So ignore that link. We'll need to update the slide. So I mentioned the European Commission's high-level group for internet governance, which is taking place on Wednesday. You'll see on this slide the key topics. So apart from just a general update from the Commission, they're going to be talking about the Declaration for the Future of the Internet, which you will recall came out, I think it was a month or so ago now. So that's on the agenda for discussion, as are some recent and upcoming events on internet governance. And then they'll be sort of finishing off by talking about the Global Digital Compact. If you want to attend that and aren't already registered, you do need to register in advance. It's all virtual, but if anyone is interested in registering for that, drop me an email separately, and I'll forward a link to you if that's of interest. But I think you need to register probably pretty quickly, either be end of today or tomorrow at the latest. If you want to go, and then they send you your sort of personalized link to attend. And then finally from me on future call topics, we will pick up in a few weeks' time, so 18th July, again on what the final agenda is for IETF 114 as well as DNS OARC. So just calling out some of the key items on the agendas for those two meetings. Other than that, you'll see we'll, as I mentioned at the start of this call, we'll as soon as I can reschedule the planned panel discussion on sort of deployment and scaling of support for encrypted DNS resolvers. I haven't yet tried to schedule it, but we'll also be setting up a call on some of the the development of DDR and DNR and split horizon support in particular. Probably that now I'm pretty sure will take place after IETF 114. I've been asked to add a session on the DNS Research Federation, so I'll do that as well. And then I think now we will be in a position to schedule one of the long-running topics that I haven't had a date for yet, which is on DNS encryption, malware misuse, etc., from the team at the University of New South Wales. So that's it, I think, from me. I see John has confirmed that the call for papers for DNS OARC is closed, in fact, so that's good to know that that's all finalised. So what other topics does anyone want to raise? Now's a good chance to do so. And I'll stop sharing so we can see each other for a bit. So anything that anyone else wants to come in on to highlight this week? And if you do, just sort of raise your hand or put something in the chat. And yeah, Alison's asked about the DNS Research Federation. It's something that Emily Taylor and a few others set up a few months ago. To be honest, Alison, I've got a call coming up with Emily in a couple of weeks' time because she's on holiday this week. So there's not a lot really that I can say about it until after I've had that conversation, purely because it was new to me when it was sort of flagged to me this time last week. So other than what it says on the website, there's not really a great deal I can say just yet, but I hope I have more to say in a week or so. And providing she's willing, hopefully we'll have Emily on this call and then she can talk about it some more as well. So sorry for not being more able to elaborate more than that, but watch this space if it sounds like it might be of interest.
Actually, mentioning Emily Taylor is good additional information. Thank you very much, Andrew.
You're welcome. Yeah, I think she did a presentation about it at the at Chatham House this time last week, but I haven't managed to find a recording of it, so I don't know if it was recorded or not. But as I say, I'll have more to share after I've spoken to Emily in a couple of weeks' time. Anyone else with any sort of news from the last week or so, or any other topics that you want to come in on? I'll just give you a chance to do so if you wish. Or perhaps anyone with any insight on any of the sort of hot topics on the agenda for DNSORG. Again, feel free to come in on those if you wish to.
I'll mention that one of the topics, it's not yet on the agenda, but I believe is going to be there, is about the interaction with the DNS that's controlled by Kubernetes, which is a topic that is a little neglected and kind of hairy. And I know that I work with the people who are presenting it. I know they're looking forward to getting interactions from others who in their day job have to untangle this mess. So I hope that people will attend with their experiences ready to share. And maybe eventually there will be some IETF work to help to get some of that stuff more clear, because it's not the cleanest architectural match.
Well, that does sound like an interesting talk. Probably worth going just for that then. In that case, Alison, that's not one I come across, so that's good to know. Thank you. Okay, just last call to see if there's anything. Oh, I see. I'll thank you, Marek. I think Marek's put in the chat. I think that's with regards to the DNS Research Federation talk I mentioned at Chatham House. That it may well have been recorded. Okay, but it didn't go into a lot of detail, so that's helpful to know. I will see if I can get a link to the recording. If I can in time, I'll put it out with the link to this recording. I'll put it on the website just so people have a chance to look at that if it's of interest. So that's good insight. Thank you for sharing that, Marek. Yes, Simon, do you want to come on? I need to unmute.
Sorry, I have too many mutes and unmutes and whatever. Marek may know more, but I don't think the link is available outside Chatham House members, is it, Marek? That's what I think, but I don't know. Marek may know more. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I have to double check, but it definitely was kind of on the record and everything. But in any case, it was more of a discussion kind of openly on issues affecting the DNS as opposed to a kind of presentation about this initiative, the DNS Research Federation.
Oh, so it might be interesting to watch, but not necessarily on the DNS Research Federation, but just on what issues people raised then.
It may be that we could get the transcript to this group or something like that on a limited basis or whatever.
Okay, well, if you don't mind trying, that would be much appreciated, Simon or Marek. Thank you for that. Right, anyone else with anything else this week that you want to come in on? Not seeing anything else in the chat at the moment. I can't see any other hands raised. So in which case, a reminder to book your IETF 114 social tickets if you've not already done so, so you can enjoy copious amounts of food and a drink within the extremely good value for money price of the social ticket, courtesy of Comcast NBC Universal. I'd be ashamed to see Glenn's hard work setting that up go to waste. Who knows, there might be free artwork with every ticket. I'm sure the organisers wouldn't mind if souvenirs were included in the price. But anyway,
just to be clear, you cannot take the artwork home with you. That is a prohibited action. Just so we're 100% clear here. Memories only. They've made me promise that.
Right, no souvenir taking then. What a shame, but still good value nevertheless. And who knows, the menu may well be fine-tuned thanks to Peter's excellent contribution of was it Philly steaks wrapped in pizza or something, whatever that was.
I looked at it. I looked at that picture. I think that the health department would have me run out of Philly if I actually offered that to people, because it looks toxic.
Well, of course, if any of my sort of Scottish friends were on, they would be instantly rushing to the nearest chip bar to have it deep fried.
I was going to say, wouldn't it need to be fried to be proper?
It would have to be fried as well. That would be probably the final sort of missing ingredient to really satisfy the cardiologists. Anyway, on that culinary note, have a fantastic week, everyone. And we'll sort of catch up this time next week, and no doubt even more interesting stuff happening in the meantime. So enjoy your week, and thanks for your time today. Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.